So we've talked about all kinds of things so far when we've been discussing America becoming a industrial superpower. And we're going to continue the conversation today. Instead of talking about natural resources or technology or inventions or railroads, we're going to be talking about how we became an industrialized society after the Civil War to big business. That's right, the rise of big business. So, entire lesson today is going to be talking about how these corporations, these different companies that are out there, owned by lots of different people but treated like it were a person, how these gigantic big business corporations are going to redefine what it means to be an American company and redefine what it means to be a business in terms of the amount of money that American companies make. So, what's this whole concept of a corporation like Exxon or Bradley's or Giant or any of these kinds of companies that's out there that's owned by a lot of different people but treated by law as if it were a person? How does that even work? And the answer is actually pretty darn simple. So, what you have here is a company, Exxon, and I represented it with this yellow square. And Exxon right now is owned by just one person. Doot, 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 doot. One person owns Exxon right now. But let's say that one person wants to raise a little money for big projects. He can sell a part of his company as a stock certificate, or also known as a share. He's sharing a part of his company with somebody else. Now, Exxon is owned by two different people. And in exchange for the share, the one owner got money. So, like, it would be like, let's say, Mr. D owning all of Exxon and selling a part of it for money to Mrs. Davenport. And what that means then is that now Exxon's owned by two people. Well, you can do this as many times as you want. If you want to spread the risk more and more and more, you can sell and resell this company as many times as you want. And for each portion of the company that you are selling, each share of the company that you're selling, the company raises money. Now the question is, what do I do with that money? So we went from Exxon, which had one owner, to now Exxon has 16 owners, in this little example anyway. And you can do this, and some companies have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of owners, depending on how many shares of stock they sell. So, what and how does this connect to what we've been discussing? Well, these companies begin to sell more and more and more stock to people, allowing them to get larger and larger, allowing them to hire larger workforces, increase efficiency, build and invent new technology. When a company does this, when a company like Exxon goes out and raises all of this money, they're able to increase in size so much that it becomes much, much easier for them to produce goods. Think about it like this. If Exxon were a teeny tiny little country, or a little company rather, it would be really hard for it to make something and sell something and buy something. But the larger Exxon gets, the larger and larger it gets, well, then the easier and easier it's going to be for Exxon to get what's called an economy of scale, where you'll see lower costs and increased production. The biggest reason for this is the ability to do things in bulk. Whether it's buy resources or supplies in bulk or to ship in bulk. Either way, that allows you to save a little money. Think about it like Costco, right? With Costco, you go and you buy like 1,000 rolls of toilet paper. Well, that's cheaper. Why? Because the company that was sending 1,000 rolls of toilet paper was able to negotiate a cheaper price because it's guaranteed business. It's able to say to Costco, all right, I'm making paper towels. I'm going to sell them to you for cheaper because I can guarantee you'll have 10,000 of them in your store. And Costco turns around and says to us, well, we can sell them cheaper because we've got 10,000. That is called an economy of scale. And it's pretty simple the way it works. Here's a little chart that helps you understand how it works. Here's what it costs a company to make something. Here's the output, the quantity that it makes. It's able to make more and more and more for a cheaper price than it is if it was going to make only a little, right? So up here, the cost would be higher and the output would be lower. But the more you buy in bulk, the more you ship in bulk, the better rates people will give you, the better discounts they'll give you. So all of a sudden you're able to produce it at a lower cost and you can produce more of them, which means you're going to be able to sell more of them. This is the really, really, really first foundation of America getting bigger businesses because more and more companies like Exxon are going to sell shares, they're going to invest in technology and factories, they're going to invest in economy of scale so that they can produce more at a lower cost. Why does that matter to us? That matters to us because, as I said on the last slide, cost is going to lower for big businesses with an economy of scale. Now, there are two kinds of costs that you need to be familiar with here, and they're listed right here for you. Fixed costs, whether or not you're operating, like your taxes or your loans, and operating costs. Anything you might need to run a business. You can see some examples there. Wages to hourly employees, the electric bill that you use, health insurance, anything like that would be an operating cost. So you have two costs. Smaller businesses are going to have a much, much harder time competing against big corporations because they have high operating costs. Here's an example for you. McDonald's buys something like a bazillion, roughly, hamburgers that we eat. They taste delicious, but because they buy so much in bulk, the cost of those hamburgers goes down, and the price that they're able to charge us for those hamburgers goes down. That's all of their operating costs because they are able to buy in bulk, and because they ship in bulk, all of the cost associated with actual operating is lower. That means the price is lower, which means we as Americans are going to be like one of the 80,000 billion people that have bought those hamburgers. On the other hand is this company right over here. This is the Lincoln Diner, my favorite little diner in Gettysburg. Totally can't do that. It's not able to buy in bulk. So its costs don't fall. Its costs, because it can't buy in bulk, its costs rise. And because its costs are higher, its prices are higher. This means that whether it's a good economy or a bad economy, a small little business like the Lincoln Diner is going to have a tougher time competing against a company like McDonald's, which has an economy of scale. It got so big, it can lower its operating costs, and it's going to be able to outcompete a different, smaller company. So right now we've got a couple things already that are helping big businesses be great. We've got companies selling stock for the first time ever, and you've got companies with a huge economy of scale because they're getting bigger by selling that stock, and that means they can produce more at a lower price because they can buy and ship in bulk, which means their operating costs are lower. All of this is going to allow business owners, people who are robber barons like Andrew Carnegie, to take a business and make it huge. And Carnegie is one of the best examples for a guy who takes a small business and turns it into a big business. This guy starts out working in textile or clothing factories. He ends up working on railroads, and he finally opens up one steel mine. Just one little steel mine near Pittsburgh, PA. But what he comes up with is a clever idea. He says, I'm going to own the entire operation that's related to making steel. Whether it's coal mines that I use to make the steel, whether it's limestone quarries I use to mix in with my iron ore that I mine in my iron ore fields, whatever it is, I'm going to own all of it. And that's a really, really big deal. A beautiful idea called vertical integration. Here's a little chart showing you exactly what I mean. At the bottom, right here, you've got whatever raw materials you need to make whatever your goods are. In the case of Carnegie, the three really big ones you need to make steel are iron, coal, and limestone. Then you got to move all of those raw materials to your refinery, right? The place that you actually are going to make the stuff. For Carnegie, that might be railroads. Remember, this guy was the superintendent of the Pennsylvania Railroad for a while. Then you actually have to process it at your steel mill, which Carnegie owns. And this is where you make the iron and coal and limestone into steel. Then you have to ship it. And you ship it on the same railroads out to market, and then you sell it. Here's the really clever thing. If you control everything on this list that's yours and your company alone, you don't have to pay other people to make a profit because it's just you. You are mining all of these resources for yourself. You are shipping on your railroad. You are making it in your steel mill. You are shipping it again to the consumer, and you are selling it to them. That means that I don't have to pay someone else to do the work because it's all mine. If it were not mine, if I just owned the steel mill, if I just owned the actual steel mill, well, that could be a problem. Because if I own just the steel mill, well then, I don't know, I have to pay, let's say Bob, for the raw materials. I have to pay Frank for the shipping. I have to pay Jane for the shipping. And I have to pay Susie for the final sell to consumers. And each of these people, I don't control what they charge me. They can charge me whatever they want. But if I'm the dude who controls everything all myself, if it's my transportation, if it's me doing the selling, if it's me with the raw materials, then I'm not paying Bob or Frankie or Bessie or any of those other people. I'm setting the own prices for myself. That means I can do it cheaper than anybody else. That means I can have an economy of scale, and I can become a really, really big and really, really powerful business. There's other ways to do this too. I don't want you to think that just Carnegie and vertical integration is the way to go. There's another way that another famous business person comes up with, and it's called horizontal integration. And what this guy did, what Rockefeller did, was also brilliant. He said, okay, what's one thing that everybody in America is going to need? And he came up with that one thing: oil. So he made a company. He called it Standard Oil. And he said, my company is going to refine oil, because oil comes from the ground, right? And then it goes into a refinery and it's made into all kinds of stuff. It's made into medicines and makeup and gasoline and kerosene and heating oil and car oil and a million other things, chemicals and medicines. All these things are made at a refinery. And Rockefeller says, America needs oil. Everyone uses it. So if I own as many firms engaged in oil refining and I put them all in one corporation, Standard Oil, I can charge whatever I want because people have to use my business. It's a brilliant model. Here's that chart again, showing you what was at first just horizontal integration, but now I've added vertical integration to this chart as well. So what you can see here would be a great example of Standard Oil, where every oil company in America that refines oil is bought out by John D. Rockefeller, and every single one is made into Standard Oil. Almost every single one. He actually owns 90% of all the oil refineries in America. That's really huge because he's essentially the only person refining oil in all of America. And when you're the only person doing something in a business, you have a special name and it's a monopoly. You completely can control that industry, which means you can charge however much you want. Could you imagine if John Rockefeller wanted to cripple America? He could have said, I'm not going to refine any products until you pay my price. And our economy would have been destroyed. Rockefeller can manipulate the price of almost anything by controlling all of the oil refining in our country with Standard Oil. It's a brilliant idea. You can imagine that Americans are going to look at this and they're going to say, well, I don't care if it's vertical or horizontal. It's going to worry me. We're going to have to start to actually, outlaw these because these people are taking advantage. Why do you think you have to go to jail and not pass go and not collect $200? Because you own a monopoly and you are taking unfair advantage of Americans. So we're going to outlaw it. We're going to say no monopolies. And when businesses do that, they say, we're going to have to come up with a different way to do this. We're going to have to come up with trusts. And the idea behind a trust is pretty simple. We don't actually sell or combine into one company. What we do is allow someone else to run our company. So let's go back to what we looked at before with Exxon. If we were going to use Rockefeller's idea of horizontal integration, then Exxon would slowly buy each one of these companies up and just have one gas company, Exxon, and we would all have to use his company. But that's not what a trust does, because a trust says, all right, we don't want to have just one company because that's going to be illegal. No one wants to go to jail. Nobody wants to not pass go, collect $200. Everybody wants to make money. So here's what we're going to do. You, little person who is the leader of Citgo, and you, little person who's the leader of BP or Hess or Sheetz, you're going to all sign a contract. And you're going to say, we agree to let the person who runs Exxon actually control our company. It's still my company. It's not Exxon's. It's still mine. I'll let him run it, and I'll get out of there a share of the profit. So I'll give a portion of my profit over to this guy to run it, but because that dude's brilliant, that woman, that man who's ever running it, that person is going to make me tons of money, and I'm going to be able to make more even if I give that one person a share of the profit. And trusts become really, really, really profitable. And we actually begin to break those up too, because we're saying it's still an unfair kind of competition. So companies try to adapt even still as they attempt to find ways to get bigger and bigger and make more and more money. If you're going to do all kinds of things like, I don't know, whatever that would be, selling stock or to achieve an economy of scale by raising all that money and investing, whether that's going to be, using that economy of scale to get lower operating costs, and then using that profit to either invest in vertical or horizontal integration and control everything from top to bottom or all of one kind of industry, whatever that it's going to be. If you're gonna then outlaw that, and then you're gonna outlaw my ability to make trusts as well, I'm gonna keep looking for a way to still be a big company and make profit, even if you say, I can't use horizontal or vertical integration. I can't use trust because it's unfair. I know the advantage of being a big business. I'm not just going to stop being a big business because you don't want me to be too uncompetitive. I'm going to create a holding company, another kind of company. And what I'm going to do is with that holding company, a company like General Electric, which you might have seen on appliances and stuff. I'm going to use that company, and it's not going to make anything. But instead, that company is going to make and own all the other companies that do. So I'm going to own, for example, as GE, three different kinds of companies, just an example now, all of which are the best in their fields. ESPN, the best at television sports. Disney, the best at kids' TV. NBC, some of the best television on programming on television. I'm not going to actually run these companies. I'm not going to control them at all. But a good part of their profit, that's going to go right up the chain to me. I'm going to buy them out. And I don't care if it was Jane running ESPN or Bob running Disney or Susie running NBC. They can run it. They can do it. I won't change anything. I'm just going to buy it because it's the best out of its field, and I'm going to let them do their job, and they're going to make me money. These kinds of companies are still legal because you're not influencing the market unfairly by manipulating anything. You're just buying companies. The last thing I want to add here is that now that you've made all this stuff, you have to sell it. So what are you going to do? How are you going to sell it? We have all this new product that all these huge businesses are making. You've got to find a place to sell it. So we start to see, for the first time in America, department stores. These huge big box stores that are out there that are going to sell everything under the sun. And when I say huge, I don't want you to be thinking like Walmart huge. I want you to be thinking like Wanamaker's huge. This is an image from inside the old department store Wanamaker's. Look how gigantic this place is. Not to mention the fact that it looks like a freaking palace, all marble, everything. It was the place you would go to buy anything that you needed because it had everything, and it was floors and floors and floors and floors tall. So you could get these products that were made by these big businesses at these kinds of gigantic department stores. Macy's is a great example today. Anyway, so you're going to end up with things like chain stores like Walmart, and mail order catalogs, kind of like the original Amazon with the Sears Roebuck Company. You're going to have all these kinds of places that are new out there to sell all of these products from these new big businesses. All right, we'll do more with this tomorrow in class. But I think we've got a good feeling for how a big business can create a lot of product for a cheap price for Americans and help our country become even stronger economically.